If black people disappeared today, fascism would reign.
The election is all but over, but the fight is just beginning. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States, but what's it gonna take to move past Trumpism? I'm very excited to be having this conversation about what's next with Dr. Cornel West and Dr. Tricia Rose. So many people have breathed a sigh of relief with this election because they feel that with Trump gone, we can return to some semblance of decency and normalcy. But Dr. West, can you break down why that normalcy is actually dangerous to aspire to and how it helped facilitate Trumpism?
Absolutely, because you see, the neoliberal conditions were the very things that helped cause the neo-fascist Trumpism. And so the idea of thinking that somehow with Trump gone, we can go back to normal, when those very normal conditions constituted the precondition, the prerequisite for the neo-fascist backlash. And what I mean by that is, if you don't come to terms with Wall Street greed, with poverty, 140 million fellow citizens living in or near poverty, if you don't come to terms with the Pentagon militarism, with 53 cents for every dollar going to the military, and then the vicious policies in Latin America, AFRICOM in Africa, the vicious Israeli occupation vis-a-vis our precious Palestinians, the presence in Asia, then you're not going to be able to fight back the next wave of fascism, the next wave of Trumpism.
Yeah. I think that's very important to make that connection and to reinforce that connection, that the things that we
let's
understood
break this down. How is this possible? How is this happening? We've been talking about this for a while now. We're talking about how could so many people who showed up for a Trump rally in Minnesota stand by Donald Trump whenever he and his shorted campaign funding decided to leave them stranded and refuse to pick up these members of this rally. How can they stand unwavering in their decision to support Donald Trump whenever he has proven that he is using his base as a political poker chip to advance his own agenda, to advance his own endeavors for re-election? All right, Donald Trump has mastered this. Yes, cultist is 100%, but Donald Trump has mastered this. He has leaned in to this rhetoric, this populist messaging. He has emboldened so many people to carry out their own internalized tendencies of racism, of hatred, of vitriol. He has promised to normalize this behavior, this advancement on the socio-economic ladder that will give individuals the feeling that they are better than other members of marginalized communities that they want to keep down. They want to keep pushing down and punching down so that they feel this self-aggrandized importance simply from having a long-standing history of benefiting from this policy, from these policies, from these foundations from which our country was built upon. That is what Donald Trump promised. All right. And that is the messaging that has resonated in so many people. And that is what Dr. West is talking about. Because of the neoliberal austerity that has pushed so many people down the ladder of our socioeconomic status, on our socioeconomic ladder, where so many people's material conditions right now all look the same, no matter what color, no matter what religion, no matter what gender. We are seeing some of the widest divides in wealth in this country since the Great Depression. So what has Donald Trump done? He has promised to give some elevation, some elevated social standing to those who have historically benefited from these incredibly draconian, racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic policies of our past. And that is what so many people are relying on, because they don't necessarily have the capacity to understand how their own material outcomes are right now a direct result of neoliberal austerity, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, but they do hear the dog whistles or the bullhorns from Donald Trump that makes it feel as though they will get some special treatment, they will get some upper hand, they will have some benefits to a policy or a slew of policies that will give them that advancement that they are looking for, so that they at least feel better, or that they are not the lowest of the low. There is something that's offered to them in exchange for their unrequited supports and votes. And that is what Donald Trump has mastered with his communication. He has dog whistled to these individuals, and they feel as though they are truly represented by Donald Trump, despite the fact that he has done nothing for them. Nothing. He has not addressed the material needs of his constituents. He hasn't addressed the inequality that is built within our neoliberal fabric. He has not addressed the true downward social mobility that so many members of his base are experiencing right now. But he did make a promise that they will at least have better social standing than the slew of our most vulnerable and marginalized populations that have been historically oppressed over and over and over again. He preys on people with the mindset that what doesn't affect them doesn't matter. That is the problem with best self narratives. He hasn't done anything for the working class, unless working class you mean white collars. Yeah, I mean, he has helped some suburbanites that would be considered working class, even though they hate that. They love to coin the term middle class because they like the idea that they are not part of the working class, because working class is often associated with low income communities, right? So did the wall ever get built? No. Not in its entirety. No, not at all. No, he said he would be hard on China, where Biden shipped the entire middle class. What do you mean Biden shipped the entire middle class? He is a working class man. It's undeniable. How is Donald Trump a working class man? How is Donald Trump a working class man? How does Donald Trump's policy support the working class? Biden didn't ship out anything. The corporations did that. Precisely. Corporations have continued to outsource to developed nations because of cheap labor costs. It is more profitable to outsource labor to underdeveloped countries, and it helps corporations' bottom line. Donald Trump did nothing. Donald Trump did nothing to stop these business models from continuing on to outsource, to advance their own profits, to capitalize as much as humanly possible. Multi-billionaire reality TV show, real estate mogul, surely the middle class, working class has a similar values and interests as him. Again, like, I just don't understand how anybody can think that Donald Trump is the president working on behalf of the working class. How he is a working class president. He's not. I need to use these points. Fuck Trump and the rest of those bourgeoisie bastards. I thought we are beyond this point. Apparently not. Wrong. Okay, let me ask you this, baloney pony. Because I am drawing a blank here whenever I'm thinking about what policies Donald Trump has enacted or what Congress has enacted under the direction of Donald Trump's administration that has benefited the working class in this country? Please just fill me in. Maybe I'm just having like a blonde moment. I can't for the life of me. Recount any policy that favors the working class. Tax cuts for the rich because... Okay. Yeah, people are saying, like, well, tax cuts for the rich. Do you know what the tax reform bill did to the middle class? The options to write off some deductibles or to deduct some tax write-offs that affected the working class. Alimony, you can no longer write off alimony on your taxes. Taxes originally were for the rich, so you can't write off some supplies. If you're a teacher, right? What's one of the biggest qualms that came about from the Trump? I mean, there are most qualms with regard to how Trump completely hurts the middle class. Everybody was talking about, oh, well, you know, there's a benefit of the tax breaks because X, Y, and Z. They eliminated SALT deductions. You can now write off your yachts and your helicopters and your helicopter pads. Donald Trump himself went down to Mar-a-Lago to his crony billionaire friends and said, I just made you all richer. I just made a lot of you richer. I made you all a lot more richer, in fact. Anyone making less than $75K a year will actually pay more in taxes in 10 years span than tax scam. Right. Well, we know that. We knew that. Asking Trump supporters about specific policy. I know it's insane that whenever I do tend to ask Trump supporters, like, name 3 things, like the famous name 3 things that Donald Trump has done for you. Name 3 policies passed during Trump's tenure that has made your life better. They always say the same thing. He built the wall. No, he didn't. The tax cuts, they benefited me. How did they benefit you? They never know. One of them said, listen, probably the most insane responses was that he killed Qasem Soleimani. Like that made this person's life better. Tariffs, net negative immigration deals, no wars for Israel. No wars for... You understand that none of those things make your life better, right? It's so crazy that the party of rugged individuals, the individuals who have abided by and adhered to this pull yourself up by the bootstrap mentality, whenever I ask, what are the things that Donald Trump has done for you that's made your life better? You tend to rattle off things that have never made your life better, that have no material consequence to your life whatsoever, that haven't done anything for you whatsoever. Deregulations do not offer you the job security that you think that they do. Just because your boss said, hey, if we have more deregulations, that's going to offer you job security. It just means that big corporations who right now emit the most CO2 no longer have to adhere to any environmental standard whatsoever, and they use your own employment status as leverage to try to get you to vote for the candidate who was going to deregulate as many EPA standards as possible. It's literal political coercion. All right? If you've ever heard that story where your boss is saying that if we see more deregulations, we're going to have to cut you off. Now, that might be true because we know that corporations, no matter what industry, no matter what sector, they are in the business of maximizing profits. If EPA regulations will cut into their business operations and they can't continue to drill or frack down to the fucking core of the earth, then that might not allow them to reach their 5-year revenue goal. And that might lead to massive layoffs, right? If EPA standards get in the way of a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year investment plan for the company or a revenue plan, if they don't continue to meet their own goals that they have set to try to maximize profits, if they don't continue to reach their own milestones in maximizing profits, then yes, some employees will be on the chopping block. But again, this is why you are listening to what your employer is telling you to do instead of realizing, holy shit, my employer does not give a flying fuck about me. They are using my own employee status as leverage to try to get me to vote for the candidate who is most likely going to allow my company to drill down to the core of the earth to maximize profits. Instead of realizing that this is the time where you should be organizing a union in your workplace, you are scared that you are not going to be working whenever massive layoffs begin to happen. This is the problem. This is the problem with the whole rugged individualism mentality, where we listen or we respond to the fear-mongering that we hear from our bosses, that we hear from leadership, that we hear from the president, and that forms our own decisions. That is what we use as a baseline. Many, not all of us, but many of us use that as a baseline to make our ultimate decisions whenever it comes down to our own material wealth, our own job security, policies that might have a direct impact on our lives. And we're never thinking as part of a collective. We're always thinking of individuals. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my job? What is going to happen to my material resources? What's going to happen to my family, maybe? If you have a family, if you are, taking care of a family. But it's really interesting that whenever I ask, what has Donald Trump done for you personally? You rattle off all of these things that have no bearing on your day-to-day life whatsoever. Listen, you can't form a union because they'll just ship your job overseas, LOL. We're back to the China problem. Yes, as the gentleman said, it's likely too late. You, again, are responding to the fear touted by your employer. Your employer will act in a retaliatory manner in response to any regulation, to any regulatory oversight, to any policy that would essentially take away the power of your employer to either rob you of all of your happiness, make your working conditions as strenuous as possible, and then threaten to leave the country altogether, because that is how much political power and control your boss or various industries in the private sector hold in this country. Imagine leveraging an entire company's operations if they get hit with an increase in taxation. And again, you are missing the points where you do not see the benefit of standing up and fighting for yourself and your colleagues in the workforce because you are afraid that your job will be gone entirely. You feel like you are beholden to allowing your boss or your company continue to reign in the political sphere so that they can maintain their power, their corporate power, continue to maximize profits altogether. So you understand how much power your employer has over you and over the government even. And yet, you still feel as though it is not worthwhile to protect yourselves, to fight for better conditions, to test the strength of the power that your employer has by forming a union. Do you really? Yes, Businesses have so much control over the government. Businesses have so much. Look at what just happened in California with Prop 22. A state Supreme Court just ruled. They presided over a rule that forced gig economy drivers to be moved into employee statuses. Uber, Lyft, any driving services or delivery services that used independent contractors as part of their business model had to bring in their drivers as employees, give them an hourly wage, and give them benefits. What did they do? They acted in a retaliatory manner. Despite the fact that they are competing in the gig economy, they joined forces, they put millions of dollars in a misinformation ad campaign, and they fought to get this decision onto a referendum in the general election to force the electorate to vote on whether or not they should be forced to bring their drivers in as full-time employees. And guess what? Their referendum passed. They don't have to bring in their drivers as employees. They don't have to offer their drivers a minimum wage. They don't have to offer their drivers benefits. They won. So yes, whenever you have that much corporate power where you can buy legislation, you can afford to put your own agenda on a referendum, that referendum passes and allows you to continue to exploit your workers or your drivers in a way, that means that corporations have massive power over the government. Look no further than what Uber and Lyft did with Proposition 22. Case in point, closed. On to the next one. You don't like capitalism, yet you participate in it. I'm very smart. What do you want me to do? You want me to move to the woods? You want me to live the rest of my life barefoot? Eating berries and shit? What choice do I have? What choice do I have? What choice do you have? We don't have a choice. Nope, we stand independent contractors? Okay. So let's talk about the benefits of being an independent contractor for Uber, Lyft. You use your own car. So does Uber and Lyft control for or consider the depreciation of your own car once you drive around and you fuck it up? The wear and tear? No. What about the insurance? No. What about gas? No. That all comes out of pocket. So with all of your own resources, your time, your gas, that could be part of your resources. Congrats, Uber and Lyft drivers, on voting to overturn your own win in court. Exactly. That's literally it, Jay. That is all tax deductible, though. It's all tax deductible, though. Is it? Yeah, it is. So whenever you're paying, what's the rate for independent contractors? How much you gotta pay? Because you get taxed. I mean, you get the shit taxed out of you as an independent contractor. You know that, right? If you're 1099, you pay a shit ton of taxes. Thank God you get to write off the taxes that you spend in your gas, in your insurance, right? So it actually kind of maybe evens out. So at least you're not getting taxed to hell and back. You get to write that off on your taxes, and that at least alleviates some of your taxable income. So, that helps overall in your taxes, assuming that you go with the itemized tax deduction. If anyone wants to see what happens if we go to war with China, please play the game Fallout. You can write your car off if you do more IRL streams. No, if you can. Tax deductions do not kick in until you reach a certain income level. Right, so what is it, over $17,500? If you make less than that, then you don't have to even file taxes. Is that correct? It's nice being able to turn the app on and work wherever. I didn't sign up to be an employee to work 40 hours a week. I'm a disabled veteran and just need some extra income. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing that you fail to recognize. If ever there is a time where you're putting in so much work, where you're making less than what you would be making, you would be making less than what you would be making with on minimum wage. Also, you are a disabled veteran, which means that you do have VA insurance to help you, and that is obviously you put in the work, you receive those benefits. What if somebody is just disabled? What if somebody is just disabled and they don't have insurance, or they don't have adequate insurance, and there would be a better option for them? There would be a better option for them if they were part of, if they had the opportunity to collectively bargain for better benefits, if that were something that would happen down the pike with unionization for new Uber employees who have the ability to use their union power to collectively bargain for better benefits. And it would end up being better than what you were getting from disability. Wouldn't that be a win? And again, we're talking about that would require a lot of power that would have to be organized with a union. But that would be an opportunity that could occur down the line if Uber drivers had employee status. Without employee status, you can't form a union. You can't collectively bargain or negotiate with Uber for better benefits. That opportunity just falls by the wayside. Not all veterans have insurance. Okay, so then you raise a really good point. If not all veterans have insurance, then you just throw away the opportunity to have benefits by fighting against or voting against your own self-interest and supporting Proposition 22. It's a transport expense. If you drive to get a protest, interviews, or discussions that you stream, you should be able to get any repairs, wear and tear, or fuel back from your taxes. Okay.
Where the development of the upward consolidation of wealth that's unprecedented in human history, and the gutting of the safety nets of institutions that have been designed to help regular working people just survive, let alone improve their lives on whatever scale they're trying to improve it, whether it's health, income, opportunity, education, and so on. And so the fraying of all those safety nets and the profound consolidation of wealth to a percentage of the 1%, not even the 1%, but even higher than that, is the context that has brought many people to this kind of, nationalism, right? This kind of America first, and that we can be great again is not only a racist statement, but it's also a kind of potentially an aim to restore America to a time when there was more abundant opportunity. There's a critique of that upward consolidation of wealth as part of that fascist agenda, right? And that I think is where the neoliberal context needs to be fought, not sort of responded to as a relief, like, oh, let's go back to where we were.
I just want to comment or take note of the fact that Donald Trump still got more than 71 million people to vote for him. So can we actually look at this election and say that, Biden's victory is a repudiation of Donald Trump's racism, his ineptitude, and his disastrous policies of the last 4 years?
I don't think that it was a repudiation at all. 58% of white male citizens voted for neo-fascist gangster. 53% of white female citizens voted for neo-fascist gangster. You had 38% of Latinos voted for him. 28% of queers voted for Trump. 29% of Jews voted for Trump. No grounds for celebration when you have that kind of support. If it were not for the black vote, fascism would have won. If black people disappeared today, fascism would reign. Not just in the Middle East, not just imperial tentacles in Latin America and other places, but right at home. And even black leadership still tied to a neoliberal hegemony, but they voted against the neo-fascist gangster.
There has been some critique of an increase among black males voting for Trump too. Number one, do you think it's fair to even focus on that? Or should we be instead really interrogating why, the statistics that Dr. West just said, an overwhelming majority of white people voted for Donald Trump?
That's a good question. So what was in the end result, Cornel, of what percentage of black male voters went for Trump? Was it 8% or something?
It looks like it was about 12.
12.
12.
So, it's still the lowest of all the other groups by far of people who you would have expected to not vote for Trump. And I think it's worth talking about from the vantage point of the gap between black men and black women, right? Because that's a really important gender gap in voting, because I think it was for black women well above 98%, right? So you're looking at almost 100% of women, and then 12% of black men not voting. So you're 89 or 88 to almost 100. That's a big gap about gender. And there is something about a kind of seduction when you're at the bottom of this kind of gangsterism that has really been culturally celebrated through commercial hip hop, which may really create an affinity for some of the portrayal of life that Donald Trump supports, which is he doesn't have to apologize to anybody. He's not beholden to anybody. He can do things at will without expressing any vulnerability of any kind, even when his life was in jeopardy with the COVID. And so I think it's worth asking that question, but it's definitely not worth asking that question in a general context when every other group was so much more responsible for supporting Trump. So I'm more interested in that question within black voting communities, but I'm much more interested when you're asking how did Trump get here, is that in that number 58 and 53 and 30, third and so on and so forth. That's a lot of support, which we really need to attend to.
Well, Dr. West, why do you think he saw increased support among some groups of color?
Well, there's always been conservatism among all communities, no matter what color. The toxic masculinity, the identification of a superman or maleness with a winner that dominates and engages in conquest of women, cuts very deep in every culture that we know, including black culture. And so in that sense, we just got to fight the patriarchy, got to fight the sexism, and you got to fight that toxic masculinity that you see in black culture or any other culture in that regard.
I want your thoughts on this brewing battle within the Democratic Party. You have Congress members like House Majority Whip Clyburn who blame defund the police for Democratic losses in Congress, and we know he's not alone. And then you have progressive lawmakers pushing back and presenting strong evidence as to how progressive policies do not, in fact, hurt candidates. AOC told the New York Times recently, every single candidate that co-sponsored Medicare for All in a swing district kept their seats. And we've heard her deliver a very searing critique of the Democratic Party. How hopeful are you that the Democratic Party might be convinced to see the value in embracing progressive policies that we've seen to be popular?
I just don't think the Democratic Party has a capacity to really embrace its progressive wing in a substantive way, which is to say it doesn't have the capacity to treat poor and working people with the dignity that poor and working people deserve. The Democratic Party is run by its establishment, is deeply shaped by its donors, is tied to Wall Street, is tied to war profiteers, linked to Pentagon militarism. And it's every 4 years you get some lip service to certain progressive issues. But when it comes down to it, the core of the Democratic Party is a corporate, Wall Street-centered, Pentagon-friendly party. And so the AOCs and others, and we've had her on our show with the Tightrope. We've had one dialogue with her in this regard. But they're on the fringes. They are on the fringes, and I just don't think that their voices will ever be central. Clyburn's voice is central, right? He gets over $1 million from big pharmaceutical companies, so he's not going to be for Medicare for all, even though we know in his own district, you got poor black people and others who need Medicare for all. He's not going for that. See, so all this talk about racial identity, now, if you don't have integrity, if you don't have deep solidarity, it's not going to go too far. The same would be true for black women in the Democratic Party. They can celebrate all they want in terms of being black women who gain access to the class and imperial hierarchy. Where's their solidarity with Palestinian women who are catching hell, who are occupied, dominated? That's solidarity, that's integrity. So if you just talk about identity in terms of little narrow neoliberal politics, it's empty in the end.
Given that, what fight do you think progressives should be waging from now until Inauguration Day?
Those 3 taboo issues: Wall Street greed, Pentagon militarism, mass incarceration tied to poverty. If you're not hitting those 3 issues, you're just dog peddling on the surface. You're just tap dancing on the surface. You're not getting to the substance in terms of the kinds of change, the issues that affect the masses of poor people, the masses of working people. And that militarism includes struggles against occupations, Israeli occupation, Kashmir, and so forth. It includes making sure that corporate policies in Latin America aren't the only lens through which you view the plight of brothers and sisters in Latin America, dealing with AFRICON and the extension of the military units in Africa.
Chat, I got a cauliflower pizza crust, and it is margarita pizza. So
greed, it isn't just banks and financial institutions trying to make money, but that they have turned what should be safe sources of investment for people into financial instruments. We're talking about a predatory kind of expansion of financial environments. And so that is extremely dangerous. And the militarization is in every aspect of life, bringing the global kind of policing and violence home in the domestic way in terms of policing communities, but also propelling what I'm hoping is a dying kind of masculinity, which is resolution through conflict, constantly resolution through violence and through power, the execution of raw power.
We have a very young audience that leans progressive, that often is looking for actionable things, like what can they do now? So we know Joe Biden is elected. What are the steps they should be taking to put into motion all these things you both have said?
I'm convinced that the Biden-Harris presidency could very well be a third Obama presidency. And the last thing we should do is commit the major mistake of not being vigilant in the ways in which that Biden-Harris presidency tapped it through the Wall Street greed and Pentagon militarism and relative silence on mass incarceration. When Obama won twice, too many people went to sleep. We had isolated, lonely voices trying to connect them to the Wall Street greed and the Pentagon militarism. The bombs dropped in Afghanistan. The drones dropped in Somalia and Yemen and so forth. We've got to be vigilant as young people, as not just progressive, but just decent human beings who believe in intellectual integrity and telling the truth and keeping track of the suffering of people, so that we don't get consistent. We have to be consistent. You got too many progressives who hate Trump, but when it comes to Trump-like figures like Netanyahu, they can't say a mumbling word. When it comes to Trump-like figures like Modi, they can hardly say a mumbling word. So we have to be consistent in that way and vigilant. We can't go to sleep because we almost went off the cliff and didn't go off the cliff. We still about to go off the cliff, but that neoliberal going off the cliff takes a different form than the neo-fascist one. And I'm glad we prevented the neo-fascists staying in the White House. indeed. But we can't go back to sleep at all, not at all, internationally and domestically. So just like in the Obama years, you had black president, black attorney general, black Homeland Security cabinet secretary, but still a Black Lives Matter movement on the ground. It couldn't translate into stopping the police killing young black folk, male or female. That what under Biden and Harris, you'll get a multiracial neoliberal power that cannot deliver for the black poor and the black working class. So you'll see police deployed on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration against Black Lives Matter movement. See, so that all of a sudden now people began to see, oh, we've got these black professionals in these high places, but they are neoliberals. So they still on the Wall Street side. They're still on the police side. They're still on the Pentagon side. And so the issues of class become very, very important here. I think that's going to sharpen.
Do you still stand behind what you said earlier this summer, I believe, when you said America is a failed social experiment?
Oh, absolutely. As a Christian, if I'm looking at the world through the lens of the least of these are poor people and working people, the system is not delivering for them in any way. It has failed. And people who are celebrating, thinking that the genius of American system now is being reaffirmed simply because we didn't go off a cliff, they don't realize the degree to which the failure is still concrete every day in the lives of precious poor and working people. And that's for people around the world. Our Palestinian brothers and sisters in the West Bank, in Gaza. What does the American empire look to you? It's a failed system because they're not concerned about our dignity. That's the vantage point at which all of us ought to view the world as persons who are concerned about everyday people.
It's a really good video. Love Cornel West. Old one. New one. Diet Coke is a hoax. Bit cup on pizza box, that's right. We'll leave it there. All right. The issue that we see time and time again is a recognizing of the dangers of any Republican administration and what it will mean to Black, brown, indigenous communities, poor white communities, and some of the most loyal voting blocs who show up for the Democratic candidate, no matter who that candidate may be, are Black women. Black women tend to vote 90% or so in favor of the Democratic candidate because they understand what's at stake. They understand that it's a dire time, these are dire situations, and they have the acuteness and understanding that it could be so much worse, and what little progress we have made, or how the regression that we could see under a right-wing proto-fascist administration would be absolutely consequential to our lives and our livelihoods and what little opportunities we have built for ourselves or what little material conditions we have secured for ourselves. Is it loyalty or fear? Does it matter? Whenever we're talking about party loyalty in terms of voting, yes, when it comes down to, is it fear-induced, these decisions to support the candidate who's representing the Democratic Party? Probably. And how sad it is that now more than ever, we are going to see one of the most diverse administrations in American history. We have Joe Biden, the president-elect. We have Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect. We will undoubtedly have a diverse array of individuals in the Biden cabinet, right? Making major decisions that affect our day-to-day lives. But are they going to shy away from the neoliberal project that has been in place for 30 plus years now? Over 30 years. That's why Cornel West says that the Biden administration will likely, or could likely look like an Obama's third term if they're planning to just reinstate all of the policies that Donald Trump has undone, and they go back to business as usual by continuing on with the Obama model, just with a few more women of color in charge. Is that going to make a difference to the material conditions of the poorest of the poor in this country, regardless of color, religion, ethnic background? No, most likely not. Which is why Cornel West says we cannot revert back to classic neoliberalism as our standard. We can't return to normalcy, because normalcy and the return to what was normalcy under the Obama administration laid the groundwork for neo-fascism under the Trump administration. It set the tone, it laid out the groundwork, it created the conditions where you have enough economic anxiety on the ground, shared by swaths of people, right? That this was enough of we have placed so much of the economic burden on the working class and the working poor specifically, that you have a right-wing populist like Donald Trump take office or campaign with a message that resonates with so many individuals who are vying to feel some semblance of legitimacy. And if that semblance of legitimacy is touted through the lens of white nationalism and overt racism and overt misogyny, and that gives individuals this sense of purpose, that they will have their needs served in the most superficial of ways, in the worst ways possible, where they are given this elevated position in our socioeconomic ladder, right, by way of leaning into the already advantaged position that they were born into because of the color of their skin, because of their gender, then this did lead to Donald Trump in his presidency. Now, if we just go back to business as usual and we make, a similar move to what looked like a return to normalcy or status quo under the Obama administration, the retaliatory impacts from the right could be much more severe in 2024. Which is something that could have even more backlash. Or if Donald Trump continues to use his power and his influence to maintain or placate his base that he has certainly developed, then this will only give more fuel to the fire in the event that he runs again in 2024. Any good EU tech company will get bought or moved to focus elsewhere. What? Captain Fubar, thank you for the follow.